Hi, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Rob.
Welcome to Introduction to Design Thinking. We help teams innovate, and we also help them build their innovation capability. I've spent the last 20 years working with startups, corporate and government to create new products, services and experiences, but also build their skills to do this.
And I've been working in learning and organizational development for the last 20 years, and for the last 6 or 7, I've spent most of my time focused on innovation.
Like you, we're really looking forward to the Introduction to Design Thinking program, and we're excited to be both teaching and facilitating you through this program. Hello and welcome back. In this session, I'm going to take you through an overview of design thinking before we get into the key 5 phases. So our view on innovation is that innovation is a culture and not a department. So everybody needs to be more innovative, not just the innovation team or the creative department or the marketing team. We also see innovation as a multi-disciplinary sport. So more like orienteering than a relay race. So in a relay race, you run around the track, you hand over the baton to the next person. What we've found in our experience, doing handovers in innovation leads to mistakes and people ad-libbing and adding their own ideas. Whereas you want to stay true to the original insights. In orienteering, you know, the track's a lot rougher, it's unknown, there's obstacles to get past, and you've got to work as a team. So in innovation or design thinking, we need to work like that team. We're also about creating innovators, not just innovations. So for the last 20 years, we've been helping companies create new products, services, and experiences, but we also help people get better at that. We help build their mindset, their skills, their tools, and that's what we want to share with you over this program. And also we want to unleash your creativity. We're all born creative, but over the years, whether it's through school, university, through life, through business, we lose some of that creativity. So we want to bring it back out from yourselves. And it's going to be about learning by doing. So whilst there's these online sessions to watch, they're going to be very instructional, but there's a lot of experiential work for you to do throughout the program as well. And so we'll be working on a real world challenge, which we'll share with you shortly. So what's design thinking all about? So this program is a 5-week experiential course consisting of online video content, self-paced individual and group work, and facilitated workshops. And what we're going to share with you, so what's in it for you and what are the learning deliverables, is well, what is innovation in design thinking and why are they so important? How do they help teams and organizations succeed? Then how to build empathy for your customers or for your users and understand what's important for them. And then from that, how to distill specific and meaningful opportunities based on customer needs and insights. Then how to think creatively and come up with new solutions for those customer insights. How to pick the winners, how to harvest ideas for potential, and then how to prototype and test, so you're bringing ideas to life and getting feedback from your customers to find out which ones you should go and build and develop. And then last of all, how to bring that all together and practice on an everyday basis. Rob and I have run hundreds, probably thousands of these workshops, and we've got a few tips to help you get the most out of it. So keep your commitment when you're in class or out, and whatever that means in a virtual world. If you're in a session with colleagues and you've got to make a call, an email, a tweet, a chat, a surf, an Insta, then just step out while you do that. But it's really important that you stay inquisitive and open your mind throughout the program. Try not to find the answer too early. Be comfortably being a little bit lost. Things will get clearer as you go through the program. And that requires you to step a little bit outside your comfort zone. So we're not going into the danger zone, just outside your comfort zone into that learning zone. To do that, you really need to support each other and remain positive at all times. So hopefully you can do that. So design thinking, why design thinking? So we know from experience and from research that more innovations and startups fail from a lack of customers than from a failure of the actual product development. So you can build a great product that works, but nobody wants it. And Rob's going to share a great example with you later on about that. So we need to focus more on the who, as in the customer, and the why, so their needs, than the what, which is the product. Now, if you want a definition of design thinking, we like to call it a human-centered, creative, and experimentation-driven approach to innovation and transformation. So what we mean by human-centered is it's focused on that customer and that user first, really understanding what their needs are and then ideating and innovating for those needs. It's creative, so that's the creative thinking skills coming through that I talked about before that we're going to unleash. And it's experimentation driven. So what I mean by that is prototyping and testing quickly, rapidly and cheaply. The minimum you need to build to get feedback on your ideas. So I talk a little bit about innovation. So here's a little definition on innovation for you. We see it as the act of challenging the status quo to create new value that satisfies a human need. So the key things there are challenging the status quo. So any great innovation challenges how things are currently done. So you just need to look at Uber and how it challenged the taxi industry, look at Airbnb and how it challenged the hotel industry, or even look at Cirque du Soleil and how they challenged how circuses are delivered. It creates new value. If an innovation doesn't create new value, then it's just fun. It's not really worth it. And once again, it satisfies that human need. So you're going to hear us talking about the customer and the human a lot throughout this program. So where does design thinking play? So we're sharing a chart with you here on the 10 types of innovation. And what you'll see is design thinking or innovation can work right across the supply chain and the value chain. So you can innovate around the product and service, which is what most people think of, or you can innovate around the experience, so the brand, the channel, things like that. But what we often forget about is you can also innovate around the profit model and the business model. Now, I'd just like to ask you a quick question before we go to the next slide. Where do you think most companies innovate? So most companies innovate around the product and service, which isn't surprising. But the really interesting slide is around where does the most value come from? So looking at the value of innovation efforts, we can actually see the most value comes from innovating around your profit model and your operating model and your business model, which isn't surprising. You know, if you look at Airbnb and Uber, you know, they innovated around those areas. And then innovating around the experience as well. So actually the most value doesn't come from product and service innovation. Now, before you jump to thinking, okay, we must only innovate around the profit model or around the experience, hold that thought. So this is a money slide. This is a great slide to share with the Chief Financial Officer. So this shows the impact on the bottom line. So what you actually see here is we're comparing companies who innovated on 1 or 2 of those 10 types that we shared before, 3 to 4 types, or 5+ types. And we're comparing it with the Standard & Poor's top 500. So these are the top 500 in the British share market. So as you see, even if you're only doing 1 or 2 of those 10 types of innovation, you're outperforming the Standard & Poor's. But the more types you do, the better you're performing. Now this data is a little bit old, so if you go back to the chart, you'll see just after 2008, there's a massive dip in the price of the shares. And this is because of the GFC, so the global financial crisis. So very relevant now in these times of COVID, you know, where we're seeing another similar dip. But what you'll see in this chart is how quickly those companies who are doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 types of innovation, how quickly they bounce back versus the Standard & Poor's. A few other benefits of design thinking to share with you. So design thinking improves collaboration, really helps streamline processes and reduces project labor. So within the corporate world, this means they're having to spend less and they're getting to market faster. Design thinking also, taking a design thinking approach to innovation also saves you time and money. On average, projects save $150,000 per project in costs by taking a design thinking approach. As I mentioned, they also get faster to market. So design thinking projects get you to market about 50% faster than a normal web project. It also increases your success rate by 2.4. So only about 1 in 7 innovations get to market and are successful. So if you can increase that by 2.5 times, then you'd want to be taking a design thinking approach. It also increases your profits by 2 times and your market share by 2 times, because you're delivering a product that has superior, unique value for the customer. Last thought, which I think is really interesting for all of you being at university. So when we think about the skills for the future, as you'll see here, design thinking skills are trending. So a couple of years back, about 3 of the skills were from design thinking. Looking at the next few years, 6 or more of the top 10 skills for the future are design thinking skills. So I just want to talk about the sweet spot for innovation. So innovation needs to be desirable, feasible, and viable. What we mean by that is desirable, the customer's got to want it. Feasible, we've got to be able to make it. And viable, we need to be able to make money from it. Okay? Now, typically what most organizations and teams do is they go, hey, what's some cool shit we can make? So they start with feasibility. Yeah? And then they make up a business case that shows they'll make money from it. But then they launch it and nobody wants it. So Rob's going to share a quick example and take you through two companies, one that took a desirable approach first and one that took a feasible approach first.
So I want to share with you the story of two products that you're probably very familiar with. The first is the Segway. You remember that thing with the two wheels that you lean forward and off you go. What you may not know is that the gentleman who developed the Segway was so paranoid about people stealing his idea that he didn't show it to anyone, he didn't test it with anyone, he didn't show it to his prospective customers, he kept it as a closely guarded secret. A couple of weeks before it launched, he invited a few of his innovator friends to come and have a look at it. And they were allowed by him to be interviewed by the media afterwards, but they were specifically told never to give any details of the product itself. So they were interviewed by the media and we started to hear things popping up in magazines about this new invention that was coming called the Segway. And it was so important that, and these are direct quotes, people will design cities around this thing. It's the most important invention in the last 150 years. And then it launched. And we saw it and we thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And he said, do you want to buy one? And we all said, no, thanks, I'm good. I've got a skateboard or a mountain bike or whatever else I use to get from A to B. I don't need that strange thing. So we see Segways now in tourism. We see them, people taking city tours on them and so on. But I've yet to see a city designed around one. And I certainly wouldn't consider it the most important invention in the last 150 years. And the reason for that was that the guy who invented Segway forgot about desirability. He looked at feasibility. What's technically and organizationally possible? Can I do this? And his answer was, of course I can, I'm a wonderful inventor. And viability, is it financially viable? Well, if it's going to be the most important invention in the last 150 years, of course everybody's going to want to buy it. But he didn't look at desirability. Did people actually want it? Did it solve for a human need? So let's compare that to the Dyson vacuum cleaner. Now, I'm sure you know no one who has a Segway. I'm sure you know no one who knows no one that has a Segway. But I'm sure you know somebody who has a Dyson vacuum cleaner. And most people that you ask about their Dyson vacuum cleaner will tell you that they love it. And the reason that they love it is that James Dyson started with desirability and stayed with desirability for a very, very long time. If you own a Dyson vacuum cleaner, the version that you own is version number 5137. James Dyson did 5,136 prototypes and he tested every single one of them with customers. So his first prototype, he said, what do you think? I've got this vacuum cleaner, it's got this cyclonic setup that makes it really awesome. And people went, yeah, that's great, but what if the cylinder on it was clear so that you could see all of the crap that it was sucking out of your carpet? So he made a second prototype and tested that with customers and so on. And that went on 5,136 times before he launched his 5,137th prototype, and that became his launch model. The interesting thing about the Dyson vacuum cleaner is that they cost a significant amount of money, much more than previous vacuum cleaners would have cost, but we pay it. And the reason that we pay it is that James Dyson looked at desirability. This does vacuuming better than any other vacuum cleaner that went before it. He knew that he had the technical ability to do it. He knew he had feasibility solved. And it's viable, even though it's a very expensive vacuum cleaner. And that's a really, really important point. If he had just looked at it from a feasible and viable perspective to begin with, he would have gone, can I build this? Yes, I can. Can I make some money out of it? I'm not sure. I don't think anybody's going to pay $1,000 or $1,100 for a vacuum cleaner. But once he understood desirability and understood that this solved needs that we had around vacuuming, he was pretty sure that people were going to pay that money. So there's a couple of examples that I hope give you an understanding of why it's so important to start with desirability and stay with it for a long time.
So, design thinking is not only a way of working, it's an innovation process. And we'll be taking you through this framework over the program and teaching you real life skills along the journey. So the 5 key phases of design thinking, once you've defined your challenge, are discover, where you build empathy for who your customer is, what's important to them, and what pains and delights them. Then in distill, we need to turn that into meaning. We need to synthesize what those key needs and insights are, because that then informs and frames our ideate stage. So we then ideate around customer problems rather than just making cool stuff up. Then in prototype, we need to quickly and cheaply bring those ideas to life so we can get them back to the customers and test and get feedback quickly and find out whether these are worth carrying on with, whether it's worth building these. So that's the design thinking process in a nutshell, and that's what we'll be taking you through in more detail. So before we get into discover, we need to get started. So we're at the beginning of the process. We get started firstly by defining the challenge. So innovation actually loves focus. Creativity loves focus. And defining your opportunity gives you that focus. What do we mean by define? So it's identifying a customer-centric opportunity, a bigger, broad opportunity that's going to provide direction for your efforts, and then also engage and align any stakeholders you've got. So whether it's working in a university team, or whether it's working when you leave the university and you're working for a startup, you're working in a corporate, or you're working for your own startup, you're always going to have some stakeholders. It could be investors, it could be the leaders in the organization, people like that. So you need to engage them with your challenge. So what are we going to be working on over the program? We're going to be working on how might we design the future of flexi working to improve people's working lives. So something that's really relevant now, hopefully something you get really excited about, get your teeth into, so to speak, and solve this for the rest of the world. So next we're going to move into discover, and Rob's going to take you how to be great empathetic researchers. Thank you very much.